how bad they get, there will always be enough people to fill the stadium.
Crippling debt that pays for degrees but not for jobs. This is a story that's being told by many university and college students from PEI and across Canada. In this episode of the webcast, we'll speak to students here on PEI about how they feel about their futures. I'm Connor Doucette.
I'm Anceline McKinnon. A reporter spoke to students at UPEI and Holland College. Yes, they're taking on a fair bit of debt, but generally, they continue to feel optimistic about their futures.
Yes, I'm very optimistic about my future. Well, I have a lot of goals in life that I think are very achievable.
Yeah, I'd have to say I'm very optimistic about my future. I'm looking forward to what it brings for me. I have a plan in motion for what I want to do, so, you know.
I'm probably going to have to take a student loan next year. I was able to make enough money in the summer before to pay for tuition, but if I'm going to move out, I probably won't have enough money. So I'll take a student loan next year. I'm pretty excited about my future. I think I'll possibly get a good job.
Yeah, I'll probably have to take out a student loan at some point just to pay for education and stuff, but it's not bothering me yet.
It's only my first year and I already have a $3,000 loan, so I'm hoping that I can save, if I work full-time from May until September, that I can save enough to not get a loan. And hopefully within my first degree I don't owe more than like $10,000.
Are you optimistic about the future?
Yes.
Okay. And why is that?
I don't know. I'm a positive person, and I just think that way, I guess.
So that's what some students at UPEI and Holland College are saying. But Connor, what do the facts and figures tell us?
Well, the most recent surveys from Stats Canada say that out of roughly 194,000 students, 49% were financed with educator-related loans, and 44% of doctoral grads owed, while 54% of bachelor grads owed. 80% of those students who owed money owed it to the government, and 1/4 of those said that they were having trouble paying off those loans. Debt was higher among university students. 54% of university grads had debt, while only 45% of college grads owed. On average, university debt was near $25,000, and while college debts was nearly half of that at $13,000. To get more insight into what's happening with education funding, Jordy Caraher spoke to the Dean of the Economics Department at UPEI, Jim Sentence.
I think the big change, which has driven a lot of the other changes, is the change in the level of government support that universities and colleges get. Back in the, well, let's say the 70s and 80s, it wouldn't be uncommon for 80% or more of the funding for the university to come from government. Now colleges and universities are lucky if they get 50%. And a fair bit of that is tied these days to things like research, so you can't divert it off for operating expenditures or anything like that. So funding per student has gone down a fair bit, and students obviously have been asked to make up a good part of the difference. So you've seen significant increases in tuition.
Tonight, student savings. The government gets rid of the interest on PEI student loans.
In August, the government announced a new program designed to lower debt costs for students. This is from a CBC News report on Compass.
We begin tonight with big news for anyone who has or plans to borrow money for their education. The PEI government has announced the end of interest charged on provincial student loans. Premier Robert Giz made the announcement today at Holland College. Patrick Fowler has the details.
We promised to eliminate the interest on provincial student loans. Today we are announcing that we are fulfilling that promise.
0% in just a few months. That'll be the interest rate on PEI student loans. In front of a crowd at Holland College this morning and flanked by the Ministers of Education and Innovation. Giz said anyone who received a provincial student loan after January 1st, 2001 will no longer have to pay interest on the principal, and new loans will be interest-free too. This will mean $500,000 less coming into provincial coffers.
Just because we're running a deficit doesn't mean that we're not going to make investments in important areas.
The Premier says giving up the interest is worthwhile for the province.
This will help islanders that are having difficulty paying their bills. This will help them in the short term, but it will also help those that are hopefully planning to attend post-secondary education, knowing that it will be more affordable into the future.
For many students, the announcement means fewer worries down the road.
Yeah, and probably pay it off faster too, because I'm not going to have to pay that certain percentage.
The Premier says it's also about encouraging more Islanders to go to post-secondary school.
Encouraging a new generation, or perhaps some people that are looking to return, the opportunity to return to post-secondary education.
And for recent grads, it's much-needed help dealing with debt. PEI is only the second province to take the interest off student loans after Newfoundland. The average PEI student racks up $20,000 in provincial student loans for a 4-year degree. The government believes if they eliminate the interest students have to pay after graduation, more people will choose post-secondary education. Patrick Fowler, CBC News, Charlottetown.
It was a little bit like robbing Peter to pay Paul. This program started after an announcement that had already been made about a 3% reduction to money going into post-secondary institutions on PEI. This resulted in higher tuition costs.
I spoke with Josh Fessy with the Holland College Student Union about the new loan program. He started by telling me about his own financial situation.
I definitely have a lot of debt. I did 4 years at UPI and had a full federal provincial student loan for all years because I lived on my own, so I didn't raise any money in the summer to pay for my own school, so full $40,000. Yep.
And what has the student union been hearing from students about their situation?
For the most part, it seems like students are actually having a lot more trouble to get student loans this year. I'm not sure really if they're cracking down but I know that our financial assistance program is at an all-time high this year, so they seem to be struggling a little bit more.
And what are your views on the student debt?
I think it's a little bit inevitable. I think that it's pretty high, and they could do a few more programs after, which they are doing some to kind of help out with the interest rates and all that stuff, because it seems like you're getting your degree and you're working at a job just to barely pay it off almost. So,
if tuition continues to increase, how will it affect the accessibility to a higher education?
I honestly don't think it's going to affect too much. I mean, tuition's increasing, but so is the minimum wage rate. It's just inflation, it's the way it is, you know. It's never going to go down because everything else, cost of living, is going up. So it's just a part of life, I think.
There are those who think the government could have spent the $500,000 designated for the program more wisely. Here again is economics professor Jim Sentence.
The last move that they made to drop interest rates down to zero, foolish. Just ridiculous waste of money. You know, I mean, somebody graduated, 4 or 5 years ago from the university with a good debt load, but they graduated from the business program. They've gone and articled, and they're now a CA pulling in a good bit of money. They don't need 0% interest on their loans. That's just ludicrous. It would make a lot more sense to improve the provincial government grant loan system, improve the grants for lower income people, maybe extend the availability of loans to people with slightly higher parental income backgrounds, because that's sort of a group that's getting squeezed. Because there, you've reached the cutoff, you're not eligible for loans, then you're trying to deal with higher tuition. I mean, that's a group that's a little problematic these days. There are a lot of things that they could have done with the same money that they're spending that would have been more targeted and more helpful.
Getting a good education is becoming increasingly expensive, and that means borrowing more and more money. But what happens when you have trouble paying it back? Jessie Ann Hennessy is a fellow student. Her sister Susan discovered that lenders will quickly play hardball if you fall behind, but she did fight back. Jessie, where does your sister live, and how did she get into financial difficulty?
My sister lives in Kingston, Nova Scotia, and she went to school to take business administration. She moved out of province to get a job in her field, and that was going fine. She was paying on a student loan for about a year. But when she moved home, she couldn't find a job in her field, so she started working 2 other jobs. And it's when she went down to one job that things kind of got difficult for her. With just one job, she wasn't able to pay on her student loan. And they started sending her letters, and they said they were going to take her income tax, which she was fine with. But because of the high interest rate, the loan was more than she thought it was, and it didn't quite cover it. So student loans sent her to a government credit bureau.
They sent me letters and everything like that, and then they said they were going to take my income tax. So I was like, okay, well, yeah, take my income tax, because it's like $1,000, so it shouldn't take long, right, to pay off $6,000? But I still owed $6,000 because they put a big lump sum payment on it every year and then charged me the high interest throughout the year.
So what happened after that?
Well, they started garnishing her wages.
That does sound really serious. What happened after they were garnished?
Well, she found it difficult to pay on the rest of her bills, and she started having to get drives because she didn't have quite as much money for gas and cutting back on her groceries, and basically just made life difficult for her.
What did she do after that?
She went to her local MLA, and the MLA called student loans for her. The MLA had to wait 2 to 3 weeks to hear back from them, and when she did finally hear back from them, they said that she was right, that they weren't allowed to be garnishing her wages, because my sister makes under $500 a week, and when you do, the government's not supposed to garnish your wages after that, but the money they had already taken couldn't be given back to her.
Apparently, once your student loan goes into collections with the government, only certain people are allowed to look at it. So she had to wait like another 2 to 3 weeks to even get somebody to give her any information on it. And then by that time, they were like, yeah, we are putting the money on there, and you're right, we're not allowed to put it on there, but we can't take it back off.
So Susan isn't saying she shouldn't pay it back.
No, she's not saying she shouldn't pay it back. She knows she should, and she's going to. She just thinks that this loan shouldn't be so much to begin with, and that the interest rate shouldn't be so high.
So what is Susan's situation now?
Susan's situation is fine now, and she's happy that they stopped garnishing her wages. She's still recovering a little bit from when they did, but she's making it okay.
Is there a lesson for other students having trouble paying back their student loans?
Yeah, I think there is. I think the lesson to be learned is that if you feel like you're being bullied by the student loans, or you feel like it's too much, then you should call them and try to fight back.
Great. Thank you, Jessie. That's Jessie Ann Hennessy, a fellow classmate.
Short-term goals is definitely to finish my degree, and I'm planning on applying to a med school program, so that's another goal that I have. With the way I have everything planned out, I don't think I'll have a lot of money until a long time, so I'll definitely won't have any big investments coming up anytime soon.
Someone with a long history of community organizing and an understanding of the importance of education is Mike Redmond.
He works at the Murphy Community Center in Charlottetown, and recently he became the leader of the Island New Democrats. He spoke with Luke Arbuckle.
It's become more and more difficult for young people to see post-secondary opportunities as a realistic option. And I think that's a very, very dangerous road for us to head down, and we should be encouraging young people to find more skills training. That's obviously something that's been talked about, quite predominantly at our Leaders Summit in Ottawa, and it's something that I would like to see the government have a little bit more focus on.
Provincially and federally, what is the best way to make sure that we've found a good balance between who can attend university? You get a lot of people that might be a little better off, say, and they don't have the issues attending post-secondary, whereas you might have a family with 5 kids that can't afford to send, like how do we find a balance, do you think?
Well, I think it's our taxation, and that's been problematic, and that started with the Paul Martin government when they started to, sort of download the responsibilities onto provincial governments, and so when you have taxation issues or platforms, if you would, the same for somebody that makes $40,000, $100,000, it starts to become problematic, and we need to tax the wealthiest and the bigger corporations at a higher rate than we do for the middle and lower incomes, and that's one way to make sure. But we also have to find ways to make sure people that are in that cycle of social assistance or whatever have the opportunity to skills training to get out. And the only way to do that is to identify those segments of the populace and work with them. And whether it's social or economic, and they're challenged in those areas, then our government needs to stand up and say, okay, we are going to attack this issue and those communities on Prince Edward Island, and how do we get the young people engaged in skills training.
What effect do you feel might the higher debt loads that students are incurring now, because they're just getting higher and higher, do you feel like that could affect our economy adversely in the future?
Of course it does. So if somebody leaves a post-secondary institution, and obviously what's happening now is, as you can see, is it's not one degree. There's a degree, a master's degree or a degree on top of a degree. So the debt is not $20,000, $30,000. It's now becoming somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000. And you put the households together, 2 people that are married that all of a sudden have gone to university both as a couple, well, their debt is over $80,000. So the chances of them buying a house are remote.
Yep.
And so they're more apt to look to be paying down their student loan debt as opposed to building houses or purchasing homes. So if they're not purchasing a home, right, that means that our housing industry suffers, and it's a slippery slope for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Education should be a right for everyone, and it shouldn't be something that we take for granted or we have to ensure that people pay a large amount of money to receive. So if we don't look at a qualification of some sort that allows people to attend university, Holland College, post-secondary institutions, or follow the skills trades that they want to, then we're going to be in big trouble in the years to come.
Should it be the responsibility of previous generations, so say the baby boomers,
sure,
to help support newer generations coming up? I mean, it is their responsibility, but when it gets to financially, we're going to be expected to carry a pretty heavy burden here within the next 10, 15, 20 years as the baby boomers grow older. What kind of support should my generation be expecting from them to get us to that point where we can take care of the older?
Absolutely. Well, what's happened, and especially if you look at Prince Edward Island, we obviously have an aging population. So in the times of prosperity, our governments past and present haven't really put money away, if you would, for lack of a better term. So they haven't really planned for the future. So what's going to happen? Obviously, pensions are going to be affected. And the federal government is going to change retirement from 65 to 67. That's going to happen. HST is going to hit. So I'm concerned that when we start looking at who's to blame, who's carrying who, it's a societal thing. And what is our priority? Is our priority to buy fleets of airplanes that cost billions of dollars, or is it to ensure our children have an opportunity for an education, a good health care system?
What advice would you have for students currently going through the system now that are incurring this debt?
First of all, they need to start to get politically engaged. We need our young people to say, we're no longer going to accept that our tuition fees will go up and increase exponentially when you are doing this or you're doing that. We need to make sure that they realize that they have a voice. And Islanders, obviously, we're very reserved people, so for us to protest or hold rallies, it goes against our good nature, but I think it's well timed that we stood up and said that this is unacceptable behavior.
There are those who say students just need to be patient. The baby boomers will retire, more jobs will come in, and the future will get better.
The island labor force is pretty well peaked, and it's going to start going down. We're getting to the point where the echo boom is pretty well flushed out of high school. So starting, I think it's next year or the year after, people going into the labor force are going to be smaller and smaller numbers. And at the same time, the baby boomers are starting to hit their retirement years. So you're going to see larger and larger numbers of people retiring. So the net effect of that is going to be a declining labor force over the next little while. That should actually have a beneficial effect for students in the future. It's not a lot of consolation for people that are getting out of university or college right now because we've got the cycle going against us and we're pretty well at a peak in terms of the size of the labor force. So they're not doing too well now. But 5-10 years from now, people are going to be graduating into a world where the labor force is shrinking and employers are finding it difficult to fill positions. At least that's the theory. We'll wait and see whether that's the reality.
So to students, hang in there. Yes, you're carrying a big debt load, but you will get a chance to pay it off someday. My name's Connor Doucette.
To everyone else, thanks for watching the Surveyor Webcast. I'm Anseline McKinnon.